Hey all, just a quick note to say how much Catherine and I really appreciate you as a listener here at Kites and Strings. Your listens are tallied, and they really do fuel our self-esteem, but sadly, those listens don't work so much in supplementing the cost. So we've grabbed our own string and made a Patreon. Now we understand that not everybody is in the position to support us financially. That's okay. You can listen as always for free. But please tell your friends and or follow or leave a nice review on sites like Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcast. That is really helpful too. But if you're somebody that can donate as little as $1 per month, we want to appeal to you here. A simple search for Kites and Strings Podcast on www.patreon.com is all it takes to become a Kites and Strings patron. There are cool perks for various levels, so check out our tiers and pledge at the level that works best for you. You'll find that it really feels good to fly this kite. So now, let's talk really cool chick and how it can be empowering to place an F-bomb in just the right place. In honor of Black History Month, we were excited to dust off this episode recorded back in October with musician Kelly Campos. Kelly is the epitome of cool chick, and she has recordings to prove it. You will soon be reminded or hear for the first time how much we had fun learning about her, growing up in Detroit, and her family, and everything that inspired her to do what she does. Despite being wicked sharp, she does everything but fill the stereotype of bookish librarian, which is what she does for her day job. So please sit back and enjoy the ride as you listen to our episode called Kelly Campos Likes a Well-Placed F-Bomb. Welcome to Kites and Strings, the podcast about creativity and the tension that seems omnipresent for those who choose to live a creative life. My name is Steve Plume. My co-host, Catherine Shinnok, and I are both registered art therapists and licensed clinical professional counselors. We explore and offer varying perspectives on living creatively, being creative, and living a balanced, fulfilled life. Along the way, we interview fabulous guests who have found their own success living their creative lives. Today, we talk with Kelly Campos. I've known Kelly for about a year now, having been introduced to her in my very cool, artsy, and musical suburban hometown of Homewood, which is just south of Chicago. After meeting her, seeing, and hearing her, I've made it a point to book her and bring her into several events. A recent socially distanced outdoor concert is referenced early on in this episode. Kelly has been singing, performing since the early mid-90s. With some solid recordings under her belt, she is a mainstage alum of Second City, Detroit, and she has jumped into the world of storytelling. Possibly most incongruent, at least from first blush, is that she is also a youth librarian, and we certainly jump into that identity juxtaposed to her rockstar persona, but it's easy to see that it's all integrated into a singular Kelly Campos. And in a very short read, I am confident that you will see that she has no problem grabbing that string and flying that kite. At the beginning of your sets, especially, like I think you said, when I play Homewood, I make this announcement. You say, yep. I am the youth librarian.
Yep.
No, your exact wording.
Well, I said I'm the youth librarian, but the songs I play are not for the children I serve.
Right.
Kelly, I love
it.
Very,
very different audience. I think the most interesting interaction I had was actually at, where did I play with you? Out at the bar, right before shutdown.
Oh, Rabid Brewing.
Rabid Brewing, right.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I had played out in Homewood in a long time. And so I go there and it's a solo show and I'm playing and stuff like that. And I look up and I see my kid's principal. and so he knows me as the youth librarian and as the mom. And he's like, oh, okay.
Okay, hold up.
So that was fun.
Because I don't know what your music is or is in such contrast to a youth librarian, but you look really young, so you're probably gonna have no idea who I'm talking about. But my brain immediately turned you into Andrew Dice Clay. With the filthiest, dirtiest, not even funny, just let me just say all the stupid things.
Definitely not Andrew Dice. But I like a well-placed F-bomb. And
Great.
I think there's power in a well-placed curse word. Grown folks music as
it's not Andrew Dice Clay level,
right.
But it's not we sing around the campfire.
Right, it's not Rafi either.
Rafi, yes.
Yeah, no, that's fun. So I have to say, because I kind of curated that event last weekend, and you were playing, and I was kind of paying attention because it's COVID, so we had to limit the number of people that could be there, and we sold all the seats and the tables and all that beforehand. And I was kind of keeping an eye on people walking just to say, okay, who's that? Maybe what table are they? And there's this Sasquatch looking dude walking from kind of the lake area. Mm-hmm. He comes over and I kind of approach him a little bit, and he walks up to me and he's like, wow, right, he heard your voice.
Aww,
and he's like, that's sexy. He's like,
that's awesome.
You could hear it from way over there, and he was blown away by your voice. So
that's awesome. That's great. That's cool.
So I thought I'd throw that at you.
I love this.
So how long have you been at the library?
I've been at the library since 2014.
And which is cool. I love that you're a librarian. I love the contrast. And of course, you kind of play off it a little bit.
Absolutely.
By day, you're this librarian, a youth librarian, no less.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Sitting on the floor, probably working stories with the kids.
Well, right now, of course, mid-COVID, right. none of that. But I primarily work with like the 3rd through the 6th graders. Okay. So like that's kind of my sweet spot. So, they're still young enough to enjoy a lot of things, but old enough to understand. So I do a lot of like escape rooms and game programs and book-related parties and stuff like that. So
okay.
But musically, that's when my most recent CD came out, was 2014. I told people there, I was like, oh, I have a CD coming out, I have a band. And they're like, oh, cool. But, I wasn't, I'm not real pushy. I'm just like, oh yeah, I have a thing. If you want to come, that'd be great. The library director actually, and my direct department head ended up coming with some friends or whatever. And I was like, okay, just to warn you, I was like, I just want to let you know there's, a little cursing involved in this. And so afterwards, they were like, you're so angry up there. Like, that's not you. And I was like, I know, that's what makes it fun. It's like, because I'm a theater kid, and, and my whole family was always like, we used to spend summers like making up talent shows that no one else would see, so like, that's just, it's fun to get up on stage and allow yourself to play a role. So that contrast of allowing myself to feel all the emotions, like that's for me, other people get benefit, but I get to be really sweet and kind and helpful and all that kind of stuff at work. And then if I go play a song, I get to be angry, and it's cathartic to be able to feel all the feelings.
I mean, I think Beyonce was pretty clear. Sasha Fierce is like her stage persona. I think Mariah Carey has a stage persona. But so I think about these performers who have this stage persona. Like for you, I really hear it's the function of you. Does she have a name? Does your like?
No, no.
Can we come up with one?
It's funny. She used to, because I've been in a band of some sort since '94. Okay. When I graduated high school, the band I was in, it was the 90s. Mm-hmm. So the band's name was Jelly's Pierced Tattoo. I did not come up with the name. I just went with it. I was like, sure, that sounds great, whatever. But people started just assuming that I was Jelly. So I dove in. I was like, all right, yes, that's me, so I went with it. So for a long time, then my stage person was Jelly. And part of that too was there were groupies, sort of, older people, not just men, women too, but like that were bizarrely obsessed with finding out who I really was. That's just weird. Like I was 19. So then I really dove into like, this is only call me this, blah, 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 because it was a little creepy for a little while.
Yeah. Like when you put on the name Jelly, it's like you're putting on a mask.
Right.
And once you put on a mask, somebody's like, I want to see what's behind it.
Yeah, exactly. For regular people, I'd be like, oh yeah, my name is whatever. But some people were just weird, So for a long time it was that. And then when I ended up moving here and things like that, then it just felt immediately false. Nobody here knew me that way, and it didn't grow organically on its own. Kind of left that behind once I came here.
Well, we'll see if we can't come up with one for you.
Okay, so it sounds like initially your stage performance name was protective, but what I'm hearing now, it's actually allow like open up and like have all these emotions. Like, I guess maybe you could rage through the like reference section at the library and like empty the card catalog.
Absolutely. I think you're actually very right. Like, and I hadn't really thought about it that way before. A lot of people say that, you know, when you grow older, you grow more conservative or something. I've grown older and I've grown a lot more militant, a lot more liberal, a lot more aware of my Blackness, a lot more aware of how I fall in the spectrum of Blackness, because in a podcast, I will specify I'm what I call multi-purpose brown. So I'm the color that they use when they want to indicate an ethnic person in a cartoon, but they don't want to specify, you know, when they just want to look diverse, you know. And I also understand that I am what I call acceptably Black, which means I speak the King's English for the most part. I am a friendly person. I'm not abrasive. Those are just my own personality traits. I meld more acceptably into white spaces. I am very aware of that. And I'm also aware that because of my personality and my education type and things like that, I am kind of naturally a bridge for people. And I try to highlight that using my music, using librarianship, using just my personality to connect diverse sets of people around whatever the issue is, whatever the idea is. Like, for some reason, I seem to be able to communicate to people well. I feel like that's a superpower. You know, does it always work? No, of course not. Nobody's infallible. I think, to connect this back to what you were saying, I think that's absolutely right in terms of like a stage presence actually now being me. You know, it's an aspect of me. It's not this other person, just me opening up different sides of me. And I think we as Americans tend to have very black and white views. And that's not speaking race-wise. That's speaking like, you know, it's got to be this or it's got to be that. And we have trouble with multiplicity and we have trouble with shades. And so I can be that person that loves to drop an F-bomb and be a children's librarian simultaneously. They can both be true. That was a long-winded way of saying, I think you're right.
Kelly, I think you said so much more in that than just what I was saying. So we're the same age. I graduated high school in 1994 as well.
Yes.
You look like you're like 20 years old though. That's why I was like, she's not going to know Andrew Dice Clay.
So the staff meeting question that Catherine talks about here is relatively recent. And for those who are not aware, I came to know Catherine after hiring her out of grad school to be a therapist in a residential setting in 2000. So she is referencing here her earliest professional life. You may note some weird tonal qualities here because, well, due to some tech glitches beyond Catherine's control, we needed to record one line many times. We're also going to learn how Kelly could have just as easily have become a truck driver.
As I've aged, I feel like I've actually integrated who I am a lot more. We asked this in a staff meeting years ago of like, how integrated is your personal self and your professional self? Now, if you asked me that back when like Steve met me, my personal and professional self was differentiated when I first started working as a therapist, and only little parts of my personal self flowed into my professional self. But now it's much more integrated, and I feel much more comfortable doing things like having visible tattoos and like having wacky looking hair. It feels really good to kind of be in this space and integrate those two different things. It's something I played with a lot. Like in high school, I was the goth cheerleader.
To provide some backdrop, Kelly,
Yeah.
you know, the name Kites and Strings speaks to that tension between sort of the flamboyant, gregarious kite and the stable string. and that they argue. In order for it to work, there needs to be that tension. And I think one of the things Catherine had brought up very early on is about integrating that kind of balance and talking about, I think you used so appropriately, you talked about the person that does a handstand. Like a person that's really good at a handstand is moving so quickly and so balanced. They're still kind of teetering, but it's so balanced within that tight handstand that it's imperceptible. You can't even see it. Right. And that sounds like what you guys are talking about. You getting to that point where it might have been this sort of toppling, kind of really unstable looking handstand until you got older and more into who you were. And then it's just like, no, it's tight. This is where we're at. This is who I am. I'm comfortable with who I am.
And the play between the or am I the string is intentional. What I hear you doing, Kelly, is really intentionally playing with, I'm the youth librarian. And I'm an F-bomb dropping singer.
Right.
Exactly.
Communication is your superpower. And what really stood out to me in that is like your relationship with words, because the library is full of words, music is full of words. And I'm curious about, like, were you like the verbal kid? Were you the writer kid, or?
All of the above.
Yes.
So I love to tell this story. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a paleontologist because dinosaurs. Who doesn't love dinosaurs? One day, now this train of thought I'm about to share, always one conversation with myself. I really want to be a paleontologist, but everybody wants to be a paleontologist, and I don't want to do what everybody wants to do. So instead, I want to be an archaeologist, and I want to work with dead people instead. Yeah, that's what I'll do. But wait a minute. Really, what I like about archaeology is the stories. So really, I should just be a writer. But they tell you that you're supposed to write what you know, and I don't really know anything. So instead, I should be a truck driver so that I can drive around meeting a bunch of people and getting stories. And that is legit what I wanted to do for like years. I was like, okay, I want to be a truck driver. That was my rationale.
And it started off with an archaeologist.
But paleontologist,
my bad.
But all of it, like as an adult looking back on 8-year-old me having this internal struggle with who I wanted to be, you know, it all was connected to the stories. So my brain was going all these places, and then they're going to the stories of these ancient people who we have these artifacts, but we don't really know things, you know, and so into the truck driver. And it makes perfect sense in my 8-year-old brain, you know. It really was all connected to the stories. And I was a huge reader. And I tell people all the time, if I had realized as a kid that the librarians got paid to be there, then I might have taken this path a lot sooner than I actually did. Like, it didn't register with me.
You just figured they were there for fun.
Right. It didn't register with me that was a job that people did. As far as music storytelling goes, though, I remember The Princess Bride had just come out on VHS, and the end credit song comes up, and I'm like, ugh, this is the worst part of the movie. I hate this song. And my dad was like, I like this little song. I was like, Daddy, it's a terrible song. He was like, well, you should write something better. And I was like, I can't write a song. And he was like, yeah, you can. Oh, okay.
Again, it's like, oh yeah, people do that.
Right. I had no clue, but it was actually still years before I actually wrote a song. But the fact that somebody said to me, you can do that, was huge.
In this section, we're going to get to hear more about Kelly's dad, who was way influential in her life. We connect on a classic dad film, and soon you'll hear that Kelly pulls a picture of her and her dad off a shelf behind her. Don't worry, we know that this is not a visual medium, but we will get that picture of her dad up on our website. I also think this is a great place to say that parents, of course, it's good that you inspire creativity in your kids, but it's also perfectly fine to let your kids inspire and draw out your own creativity, whether it's a brand new thing for you or whether it's something that went dormant while you were in the midst of making sure your little crumb suckers weren't sticking forks into electrical outlets.
I am am so in love with your dad right now for that one statement alone. Oh, let's see this man. Yes. Your dad is fucking awesome.
He passed away in 2015, I believe.
Here's really what makes me love him about that statement. It wasn't the blanket, you can be anything you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
He was really, really paying attention to you, and he heard potential for you to like grow, and he just kind of was like, go do it.
Absolutely.
Right, because he heard that you being a little critical. That's a subtle thing to pick up on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he could have just said, no, this is a good song. Be quiet.
But Kelly, then you have found ways to wordsmith in all sorts of genres. I know that you do storytelling.
I do.
Yeah, and I was looking at your website, and you've been the main stage at the Second City, Detroit, right? So you're doing improv comedy, and then you write music, and then you mentioned earlier all the things you create in the library.
Yeah, absolutely.
Around words and books and all that type of stuff.
So many of these things came later, and it's like, but I've been storytelling all my life. I didn't know. That's another thing I actually got from my dad. You know, I wish that I had been able to get him into storytelling, because he was just a liar, a world-class liar. But he knew that we knew he was lying, and that was part of it. You know, like it just he would just make shit up, and we'd just be like, what? No. He would cook a lot. You know, he was a cop, and he would come home from working midnights with his badge on, and you know, he'd stand at the stove before we go to school, like, all right, what y'all want to eat for breakfast? And he'd be cooking up some eggs or whatever, and he'd make these big meals. And he told us that he cooked so much because he used to be a cook in the Army. He was never in the Army. Never once. So, I mean, that's just one example of like just random stuff he would say, you know. He also told us how he went to school to study to be a priest, but that one was true. And we were grown, like grown out the house before we realized that was the true story. He had gone to the seminary when he was 17. So like, it's funny because that movie, Big Fish.
Oh, I love that movie. I was thinking about that.
It's one of my favorite movies. I've only seen it once, and it reminds me so much of my dad. Those stories, like they all ended up being true in a way. That's a great movie.
I remember weeping like a baby on that film too.
Absolutely.
And there's a beauty to it, right? You know, some people might look at that and just say, oh, that's just flat out lying, or that's exaggerating. I think it just draws people in closer to you.
Based on the reaction you gave him, that would like feed him to keep going deeper into the story.
Oh yeah. And there's 3 girls and 1 boy. The boy is the youngest. We fit the mold of gregarious girls and quiet boy very much. And I think my dad fed off of our theatricality, our effervescence. You put us in a room right now and we're just pop, you know, referencing old jokes and this and that. So he definitely fed off of that. After he passed, you know, we find notebooks with partial stories written in them with, you know, things that he had been working on that we didn't know about or whatever. And found out that he had taken a screenwriting class. We didn't know about that either. I think that he saw how creative we were being. He fed off of it. And then later in life, he was like, you know, maybe I should try that, you know? And there's actually a song. He sent me a chorus. He was like, oh, I got a song for you. And I'm like, oh God, Daddy. Okay.
Yes.
You got a song. Let's hear it. And he sent me these lyrics, and I was like, oh no, you got a song. I was like, I'm gonna write that. And I wrote it. He wrote the chorus. So I'm gonna sing for you real quick the verse into the chorus. You think your shit should be the talk of the town. You walk like your feet touch liquid, not solid ground. I've got your number, baby. Look around. Very He wrote, "Your mama said to go on and sow your wild oats, but I ain't no field and I sure ain't your hoe." And I was like, "Oh, Daddy, you got a song."
He sure does.
Wow.
Oh my God.
So
Yes.
I was, again, in hindsight, I'm super glad he was able to like see me perform that song on stage with a full band.
Yeah.
You know, that was
Wow.
that's pretty
Yes.
awesome.
That had to have been amazing. And I,
Yeah,
you know,
it was
you definitely said that. I mean, you mentioned that it seemed like after seeing you guys do all of this stuff and that kind of maybe woke something in him. And I'm going to, I mean, I don't know him from Adam, obviously, but I'm going to guess that it rewoke something in him.
Oh yeah, I would guess for sure.
Right.
And both of my parents had a love for words. You know, books were everywhere in our house. That was a treat. Saturday, we going to the bookstore, woohoo, you know. But also, like, my mom was an English teacher and things like that. So, like, words in general were praised in our house. Like, we had favorite words. Like, one of my dad's favorite words that he would always say was juxtaposition. He's like,
love that word.
And so the fact that we have favorite words, like it's just a word you like to say and you want to try to fit it in conversation, you know? So like, you know, why say good when you can say stupendous?
Kelly, you are juxtaposition of opposites.
As you said that, I remember just yesterday, I was telling somebody about my hair. I wear my hair natural most of the time, but wearing it natural, like I like extremes. I either like it pulled back and fitted to my head or big as all get out. I don't like it halfway because halfway means that you didn't make a decision. Or that's how I feel. Like I feel like I didn't make a decision and it's just kind of there. So I want one or the other, you know.
You're resolute.
Yeah. And I feel the same about like hemlines. Like either, you know, pick a hemline.
Fuck that T-length skirt over to the floor or barely covering my ass.
Basically. You know, like.
Wait, so here's what I've got from you, Kelly, is that you like extremes?
Absolutely.
All right, clarified. Like
funny.
butter.
I love it.
Like flowers grow in the concrete ground and a wingtip shoes try to crush them down. Some gray or white roses and they don't understand.
On our website, we'll make sure you have links to Kelly's music. And I hope that you really liked Kelly's embrace of the extreme. She kind of says, either say something big or go home. That said, in order to explore a possible middle ground, I love that we were able to make a cool switch into another art form that Kelly engages in, storytelling. And she shows her library science parts here too. By the way, we're listening to some Jelly's Pierce Tattoo right now. So you've got this kick-ass rock, you've got youth librarian, right? Those are the extremes. And I can't think of that middle ground for you.
I think sometimes my storytelling is that middle ground. Some of my favorite stories to tell actually are story with music. So like I'll pull out my djembe and play the hand drums and make the music an integral part of the story. It's not song. It's not like you're singing a story. It's definitely storytelling with music. Because with storytelling, you can really dive into one moment or one experience or one viewpoint. It's very visceral because if I'm doing it well, I'm not only communicating the words, but I'm communicating the emotion and I'm communicating in a more immediate way. It should feel like me to you. But I think maybe the storytelling does fit some of that middle ground.
Well, you know, as you said that, it does make me think about how storytelling is so direct.
Mm-hmm.
It's just straight words, me to you, right? And that's the beauty of storytelling.
Yeah,
I'm really getting from you, Kelly, and really hearing, like, it punctuated even more is how much of art and creativity shows up as storytelling, either storytelling through sound, through movement, through words, through visual images, and just how essential storytelling is to humanity. Like, I think about like going back to like cave people days, like storytelling is how we shared history, how we shared knowledge, and how we're still doing it, but just very differently, or maybe not so differently, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I had a couple of thoughts there when you said that. First thought was a Hamilton reference, of course, who lives, who dies, who tells your story. And then another thought is going to seem like it's out of left field. And it's an article I read. I don't remember who wrote it. I know he was a Black man. It was after Trayvon Martin was killed. And he was like, and to clarify, his stance was not at all saying that Trayvon Martin did anything bad. What he was saying was, we as a society need to normalize Black people in hoodies. But not just normalize them as people walking around, but normalize them as record executives, normalize them as librarians, normalize them as regular everyday people and people in positions of power. Because when people are not used to seeing something, they immediately go to the stereotype. And this connects to how we were talking about being our authentic selves, like you wearing your tattoos loud and proud, doing your job. Someone will see that and say, oh yeah, this is normal. And I think we all do ourselves a disservice when we hide behind that mask of professionalism, of what we think is professionalism, this idea that we've been given, that we've kind of carried over from like the 50s, this idea that professional looks a certain way, when really professional is behavior, not
my
looks.
mom had a big issue with tattoos. She, look how unprofessional it looks and blah, blah, blah. And I remember one of my moments of making some sense back when I was younger, saying, well, what if a guy in tattoos showed up and he was the paramedic you needed? Right? It's like, what are you going to do? Send him away because he doesn't look quote unquote professional?
Professional, right.
Stereotypes,
Exactly.
prejudice, implicit bias, that's all rooted in the stories that we've been handed by a select few. And
Absolutely.
if I don't ever interact or expose myself to people who are different from me, I'm just going to follow the story I was fed. I'm going to say a Black teenage boy in a hoodie. I've never met one before, so I must assume that he is trouble. He is bad. He's up to no good. The more that we alter the stories that we tell, exactly to your point, Kelly, that we can see CEOs in hoodies, and it doesn't have to be a record exec. Like, come on, why do you have to wear a fucking suit and necktie to work in finance? You can wear a hoodie and be just as smart doing that. And the more we start merging these things, the more juxtaposing, Kelly's dad, juxtaposing things that we don't normally mix together, the more we're going to, I think, become more accepting. And that gray area, that middle ground, is just everything.
Well, it challenges those preconceived notions, and we want to do that from time to time. A lot,
Absolutely.
actually.
Yeah.
The own voices movement within literature and libraries and book publishing and all that kind of stuff. It's like, it's not just that the stories need to be told, it's that the person living that story, their voice should have precedence. And it's not saying that nobody else can tell a story that has a Black person in it if you're not Black. That's not what it is. But the stories need to be authentic, and you need to have some knowledge of what you're talking about in order to accurately tell the story. Otherwise, you're just, it's not that story. Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, I looked it up to make sure I was saying the right name. She had a phrase where she said about books that books can be windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. So they can be a window where you can see other people. They can be a mirror where you can see yourself. Or they can be sliding glass doors that allow you to go and live in someone else's, in some other place.
I really like that.
And that's a really important concept, just in general, not just books. We have to have stories that reflect us, reflect others, and reflect other worlds and other viewpoints, other worldviews. And that's partially on us, again, connecting to this idea of respectability and professionalism or whatever else. And partially why I think I have made this unconscious/conscious decision to be Kelly Campos in all aspects of myself, as the children's librarian, as the rock star, as the storyteller, to be that same person and say, all of this is my story.
So I love that growth and that transition from being Jelly to being just plain Kelly, right?
Uh-huh.
We're going to jump from the medium that Kelly uses to content and how it has changed and stayed the same for Kelly over the years. I'm really glad that Kelly is so quick and open in sharing her experience as a Black person, as I know I cannot bring cred to that subject. We've talked about the story and the medium of storytelling, whether it's in song or whether it's in direct story or wherever. And just kind of give us a sense of your path, the content. How's that grown for you? I know that there's certainly a lot more important shit to talk about now.
Absolutely.
And I think that you're somebody that embraces that.
Yeah, I do. Just a couple years ago in February, there was a whole bunch of stuff that happened. Like Beyonce did something. I think Barack Obama was still president, and like a whole bunch of stuff happened. And I was still in school. And I remembered saying to another Black girl that was in class with me, going, "This is the blackest Black History Month ever!" Like, and we were like, "This is amazing." But before that, in recent memory, the 90s were a very aware time period for Black people. That's when like t-shirts came out that I remember saying like, "It's a Black thing, you wouldn't understand," or "In Living Color" was out, and "It's a Different World" was out. Like there were a lot of things that celebrated Blackness from a certain point of view. And then it kind of died down a little bit in the early 2000s, like within the mainstream. And like all things are cyclical, so all things fade and come back that are fashion or thoughts or any of that. With that in mind, then actually some of my songs from the very beginning of my songwriting really hold up to the types of things that I'm interested in writing about now. Like there's a song called "Black Flowers." Black flowers grow in the concrete ground, and the wingtip shoes try to tear them down. Some rare white roses from the ghetto understand, and it don't change. For 19, 20-year-old me, that was my way of talking about how Blackness is often just crushed out of you, even though it's beautiful in unexpected ways. Like Black flowers don't grow. There are no truly Black flowers, but yet they still exist. And I have a newer song really very much about the same thing. It's a Black fairy. It's like I'm a Black fairy in an urban jungle, set in the wrong place, lost in the shuffle. There's got to be someone who feels like me, like they were born long ago, but haven't yet learned how to breathe. And so it's interesting talking about the growth in songs. Like there's definitely a lot of growth, just getting better at putting words together. But content-wise, it's interesting how, I started off in that place and then went very much into, love and relationships and all that, to the exclusion of other things. Now I think I try to, again, do all of that. Like you don't have to be one or the other. You can be all, and I can enjoy the thoughts of all.
And I love that it's coming out. And I wonder how much of it is, and I'm trying to think of how to say this. It's just kind of like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost like this at this point, it's great to see it, but it almost seems like it's coming out in retaliation to the garbage that's in the White House and the stuff around immediately coming from there.
I would say to some extent that could be true. But I will also counter by saying that for Black folks, it's always been there. It's just a matter of whether white folks have seen it or not.
Yeah, that's fair. That's for sure.
Common memes and stuff like that. A white person being like, "Did you know that blah, blah, blah?" And a Black person back like, you 10 years late, like,
Uh-huh.
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
and so, yes, that's a humorous way of saying it. But when your circle only looks a certain way, you can't be expected to know what these people are talking about. And that's just in general. Like if at work I only hang out with the people I work with, I'm not going to know what they talk about on the third floor. So that's for everything. And when you're talking about culture and race and socioeconomic divides, then unless you ask or unless you research or unless you look it up and try to find out, then you're not going to know, except what, the mainstream feeds us,
Yeah. I guess when I was hearing the trajectory of your songwriting content, therapist brain was like, oh, that sounds like it's following the developmental trajectory where when you're 19, 20, you're focusing on identity, you're focusing on your experience in the world as you're moving into being an adult. And then in your like 20s and 30s, you're exploring relationships, connections, family, and your lyrics become more about love and friendship and relationships. And now in your 40s, where we're like we talked about earlier, like integrating all these parts, you're seeing, well, duh. I mean, of course, as I was exploring relationships, I was also Black. And like, why didn't I sing about all of that?
Right.
And so now it's all kind of like gooed together in the whole you.
Integrated.
Absolutely.
Gooed together. I like
Gooed together.
not glued, gooed. It all turned into like
Gooed.
goo and like, this is you.
Together, smooshy.
We can understand that creativity was something that was fostered and developed as a kid, and I see it really still being alive in you now. Are there any forces that you feel are kind of against that for you? Some people feel like, gosh, in order to live that creative life, they have to make so many sacrifices. Do you ever feel that, or are you just feeling comfortable and letting it flow no matter what?
I was just talking to my husband about this not that long ago. I think my problem is that I have too many creative juices. I have too many things I find interesting. I have too many, and I can't focus. It's hard for me to cut things out because I want to do all of them. I want to be on the diversity and inclusion committee for the local area libraries. I want to do that. I want to make all of the craft takeaway kits at my personal library. I want to do that. I want to write new songs. I want to write a play. I want to direct a play. I want to write songs. I want to write a musical that I release as a podcast. I want to do all of the things. I also want to sew new masks with the fabric that I bought. But but it's too many things, and you can't do all of the things. And choosing which of the things to prioritize is my problem.
Well, but you have finished some things. How have you chosen in the past?
External forces. And I know this. I am very, if there's a deadline at work, or if a person that I know and love is like, I need this by this day and time, then I will do those first.
Lots of creative people have all of these things, and how do we decide what to do, and what's the choice? So we've heard from the people who have like spreadsheets and sticky notes and organizational structures that map out all the things that need to be done and the steps to get there. We've heard from the people who are like, I don't know, I just woke up and like looked at that song and was like, that song wants to be written today, and it's called that way. And now we've got the like accountability from another person. These are all different ways we get called into the different directions of creativity.
Absolutely. And it's funny, here's another story about my dad. I was writing a story on my new Apple computer when I was maybe in the 8th grade. And I was writing it just to write it because I just wanted to write a story. So I'm down there typing a story. And my dad's like, oh, what are you writing? I was like, oh, it's a story for school. Because I, for some reason, was embarrassed to say that I was just writing. I don't know why. There would have been no recrimination at my house for that. But he's like, oh, okay, when is it due? It's due next week. Oh, okay, you better finish. And then he asked me every day how my story was going. So then I had to hurry up and finish this story so that I could turn it in. But it didn't have to turn it in, but he expected to see it turned in and graded. So then I printed out and graded my own story.
Did you give yourself a good grade?
I did, but I also like I took issue with my own content. Like I didn't think I needed the kissing in that story.
That's funny.
Oh my God. I love how this has come full circle that you like lied back to your dad.
It's the stupidest things and so stressful. Like instead of just saying, I was just writing it for me, I like gave myself this hardcore deadline. And
I love that. Do you want to make a declaration here that will put some pressure on you to complete something?
Well, no, but the thing that you said that got me super, super excited is probably the biggest of all of the things you said. I would love to hear a musical delivered through podcast.
Okay. I'm going to say what it is. And then this way it's on record and the date and time, etc. It is Thursday, October 8th, 2020. My name is Kelly Campos, and this is my idea. It's called a Status Update, and it is a musical written entirely based on people's social media status updates.
I could see this, like so many status updates just sort of popping up with that little whoop noise
Absolutely.
or whatever.
I've had the idea for a while because in 2014, the CD that I put out, which is called Coolest Chick, which is on Spotify, by the way, there's a song on there called You Don't Miss Me Enough. And that song was actually written based off of a status that a friend of mine posted. And she posted and she said, I woke up this morning with my clothes on, my nightgown was on underneath, and it's a song about, girl going out partying and all that kind of stuff because he does not miss her enough. And damn it, he's going to miss her. He's going to see her out at the club having fun. He's going to see all these things and I might go crazy, but he's going to miss me. So that was where the idea actually came from.
Cool. Is that how you typically write a song?
There is a typical way for me. I have legit written songs off of windshield wipers. I've written songs going down the stairs, depending on how your feet thump.
Well, and it makes so much sense because when you play the drum.
Yeah. I'm not a good drummer. I'm not a good guitar player. I've kind of fallen into those things. For hand drumming, the djembe, I decided that it was like dancing. And if I choreographed my hands on the drum, then I could sing at the same time. The rhythm is definitely a driving force, though, for sure.
Right, and it definitely gives you a home for the words.
Exactly. I need structure of some sort. Like I'm one of those people like where if you said, "Oh, you could do anything you want," I would do nothing. But if you said, "You have to live in this tiny box and you have to make something happen," then I would just explode.
Yeah.
I would have all kinds of ideas. It's the walls that give you freedom in a way.
Yeah.
Because otherwise there's just too much space and
they give you.
But I hear you find your own walls either in a phrase that you see on social media, a random phrase from your father, or from a rhythm that you hear just existing in your world in some way.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that creates enough of a box for you to then like work in and build out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
I love it.
You find these ways to weave, like you had mentioned, Catherine, it's like pulling things out of just your environment, pulling things out of existing lore and story and building upon that, and just finding ways to create these pathways for words. I think it's wonderful.
I love it.
So cool. Well, Kelly, it has been such a pleasure talking to you, but it has been so much fun. I thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Yeah, thanks for asking me. It's good.
All right. Nice to meet you.
Okay.
All right,
Bye.
you too, Catherine.
Okay,
All right, I'll talk to you
take
later.
care, Kelly.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, I don't think I'm alone in assessing that, like the title of her album on Spotify suggests, Kelly Campos is the coolest chick. and she's committed to being who she is, whether she is inspiring kids at the library or belting out tunes from the stage. You can find out more about her at kellycampos.com or at Kelly Campos Music on Facebook, and be on the lookout as she has some big ideas and cool things on the horizon. Thanks for listening today, and know that our website is at www.kitesandstrings.com, where you can see pics from today's episode as well as past episodes. Please be sure to share Kites and Strings with your friends and rate us. It really helps. And if you have a moment to drop ideas, suggestions, or just to comment, please email us at kitesandstringspodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. The Kites and Strings theme music is by Harrison Amir. Original songs are by Kelly Campos and her previous band, Jelly's Pierce Tattoo, as well as Pixabay Music at pixabaymusic.com. Today's episode was produced and edited by me, Steve Plume, at Turning Stones Counseling, Inc. Be safe.